I'm John. Originally, my dad, Charlie Kirkwood, was asked to come and speak to you, and I'm actually here kind of as a substitute for him. And I think it might be a little bit more interesting for me to talk about him for most of my comments, and then I'll talk a little bit about me and a little bit about the business, and of course, feel free to interrupt me and ask me any questions you like. My dad grew up in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania, so half hour away, and he was the very first person in his family to graduate from high school. So his sister and his parents and his grandparents, et cetera, didn't even finish high school. So he's an example of a person who I like to say truly achieved the American dream. He was a self-starter, so in that sense, you were asking about what types of qualities make for a successful entrepreneur. I think being a self-starter, being motivated internally, being able to persevere in the face of obstacles. In his case, it was coming from a family background that didn't put a lot of emphasis on education. And he worked hard. He throughout his high school years and his college years, he had many different jobs. He paid his own college tuition. He was very, very smart as a young man, which helps. I don't know how you achieve that without some hard work, but it came somewhat easy to him. He went to Williams College in Massachusetts, which is quite a good school, and as I mentioned, he paid his own way through college, and he knew that he wanted to be a lawyer from a young age, so he applied to Harvard Law School, and he got in. So he comes from this background, which is a family that works in the Bethlehem steel factories, very much a blue-collar type family, and he worked his way through Harvard Law School by the time he was in his mid-20s. So it's sort of this example of a tough act to follow if you look at it from my point of view, but he's really quite an amazing person. In those days, it was, of course, the Vietnam War era, and it was mandatory for men of his age to be in the military. He was in the Coast Guard, United States Coast Guard, so immediately upon finishing law school, he was in the military, actually in an event which you might have heard of called the Bay of Pigs. It's when the United States had a blockade around Cuba. We were worried that at that time the Soviet Union was going to put nuclear missiles within 90 miles of our country. And it was actually, his particular participation was a little bit of a fiasco. You know what that means? It means it was a bit of a messed up deal. And a lot of pro-Western Cubans attempted to retake the island of Cuba, which was under control by the communists under Fidel Castro, and they were unsuccessful. And he, of course, wasn't injured and wasn't captured, but he was part of an enterprise that didn't work at that point. But anyway, he decided upon leaving the military that he wanted to get into business, and he wasn't exactly sure where to start, and he had some family friends in Ohio. So he got a job in a bank in Athens, Ohio, which is a little town in kind of middle of nowhere, Ohio, and he worked his way up to become the youngest bank president in the United States. He was 26 years old, and he was the president of the bank. And that would have been a big achievement for anybody, and you'd think that would have made him happy. And for a while it did, but he had a life-changing event. He was in the bathtub reading a book in Athens, Ohio, and the lamp that he was reading with fell into the tub, and it severely electrocuted him. And he was able to get the lamp out of the water, but then he, of course, was sort of almost unconscious. Anyway, he lived, and he sort of saw the writing on the wall. He had this near-death experience. He said, I don't want to be a bank president in a little town in Ohio. I want to see the world, and I want to do more. Maybe that's another criteria for entrepreneurs. They aren't easily satisfied. They're often looking for the next hurdle, the next horizon to overcome. If they have some success here, they want to use that as a springboard to do something a little bit more, to do something for the community or for the business. So anyway, he decided that he wanted to see the world, and he bought one of those tickets. In the old days, you could buy a round-the-world ticket on Pan Am, which is an airline that none of you have ever heard of, but used to be a very big, famous airline. And if you go in one direction, you don't have to choose what cities you're going to go to at the time. You just keep going in that direction. So you can fly to England, or you can fly to France, or you can fly to Germany, or you can fly to, and so on. So he bought one of these tickets because he wanted to see the world. While he was in Turkey, which is a country in the Middle East, which you've probably heard of, it is an interesting country because it's the only Muslim country in the world that separates church and state. You guys know what I mean by that? In America, we make a big deal out of separating church and state. It means that if I'm Christian, if I'm Jewish, if I'm Muslim, if I'm Hindu, if I'm any other religion, it has nothing to do with my rights as a citizen. In other Muslim cultures, the dictates of the church overlap with the laws of the land. So anyway, my mom was a Peace Corps volunteer in Turkey, of all places, in 1964, and my dad was an American kind of tourist just passing through, and he met this young woman and fell in love with her and asked her to marry him in 8 days. And she said no. She said, "Who are you and who do you think you are?" But that's another trait, knowing what you want when you see it. And so he kept a correspondence with her. He would write her letters while he continued on his journey. She had a 2-year commitment in the Peace Corps, which, by the way, is a great organization, and I encourage you to look into it if you want to see the world and make a difference. Anyway, my mom's commitment to the Peace Corps ended at a time when my dad happened to be in the country Thailand, which is in Asia. So he continued traveling to the east, and he was in Thailand during the Vietnam War era, and there was a lot of investment, foreign investment, American spending money in Asia trying to support the war effort. So he had a law degree, and he realized he was in an interesting place, so he founded a small law firm, which is, law office in Thailand to do business law, mostly for foreigners who want to do business in Thailand. And my parents were married in Thailand, and they spent the first 8 years of their marriage in Thailand. So my brothers and I all speak Thai. We've lived in this foreign country. We were very lucky to have benefited from living in a foreign land. It makes you appreciate the things about America that are so great. It makes you appreciate the differences between people and the fact that there's more than one way to do things. So anyway, how this comes back to business is, my dad had a law firm in Thailand. My mom was there as a full-time mom. It was a very wonderful place to live, and he thought that that would be where he would continue to work and thrive. But then he got what in those days would have been like an email or a fax. They called it a telex. It kind of was like a hard copy fax from a man in Milford, Pennsylvania, who told him that the Shawnee Inn and Golf Resort was in bankruptcy and it was for sale. Okay, I'm going to go back in time now. When my dad was a little kid, when he was 14, 15, his family would come up to the Poconos, to the Bushkill area, and go hunting and fishing and do what people do, and what people still do in that area. And when he would drive by this place called the Shawnee Inn, his parents would always look at it and say, "Oh, that's where the rich people are." So he always had this idea that the Shawnee Inn was this sort of, shining mansion on a hill kind of thing. And when he was 16, he attempted to get a job at the Shawnee Inn as a caddy, a guy who carries golf clubs. And they told him he was too scrawny. They didn't say that, but they said he was too young, too small, and he didn't get the job. So he had this sort of desire in his heart about the Shawnee Inn that someday he wanted to come back and buy the place.